Here.
Odom.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Whistler.
Here.
White. Here.
And at this point, we would like to welcome visitors. It's a public forum. Anyone would like to address the board, now's the time. Pretty quiet. We'll move on to approval of the agenda.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We have an agenda. Next is approved minutes of the previous meetings.
I'll make a motion to approve. I will second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Old business, approve the Lakeview Bleacher Project contract.
We have Rochelle on to kind of answer, there were some questions about the project and things like that. An engineer's seal, I think it was called. I'm trying to remember the names, things of that nature. So Rochelle, can you hear us okay there in technology land?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. So we had some questions that were brought. There was some question from one of the bidders about whether or not the plans had met the codes. Would you be able to speak to that at all? Like, they were concerned that maybe there wasn't something addressed of what to do between the press box and the stands, that was an issue.
Yep. So just kind of an overall, all the elements that are being modified are being brought up to the Bleacher Code and ADA code. That includes adding aisles and handrails, guardrails, stairs and ramps are being added at the ends, and we're adding additional ADA seating locations. The other thing, just to specifically note, Mark, on your question about the bleachers themselves, or excuse me, about the access to the press box, we did, that is taken care of with some guardrail additions that we're doing and adding that fencing that runs along the back there of the press box. So we did actually confirm with the individual, the person who got awarded the bid, that they included that in their project bid. So.
There was a question also that came to us about the width of the aisles. And I kind of talked to you that day we talked, and you kind of told me more about that. So the concern that was brought to us by one of the companies was they didn't think that there was a width on the aisles. Could you communicate a little bit about that?
Yes, we showed the aisle widths on there and what was required per code on each aisle. We have 4 aisles, 2 on the ends and then 2 in the middle. So there are 4 total exits there.
And then I think one of the concerns was, and you talked about this, and I guess what you said made perfect sense to me, but I'm not going to be able to quote it very well, so I'm glad you're here. That contractor had also said they were concerned that it didn't say ADA compliant on the plans.
Yeah, so usually when like a bleacher manufacturer will do shop drawings or things like that, they'll say everything is ADA compliant. Well, I'll tell you that we have to design as an ADA. If we're touching something, we have to bring it up to code to ADA. So everything that we are touching is being brought up to ADA compliant.
And then the idea of this engineer's stamp, was it?
Yeah.
So where's the requirement for an engineer's stamp, and why would we not be required in this case to have that?
So we are not engineers that design bleachers specifically. We obviously put the drawings together, but the people who install or order material are required to make sure that they have an engineered stamped on there. We did confirm with the bidder who won the bid that they had already discussed this with the bleacher manufacturer, that they're getting the materials for this bleacher set.
Okay, so in the case of updating, this is a requirement on the contractor, not a requirement on the
Correct.
case. Were there any other questions about the contract for the bleachers that we needed to answer with Rochelle here?
I guess so, in your opinion, Rochelle, everything's good to go.
Yes, yes, I think everything's good to go. We did have some conversation about some footboard items that we are verifying on that, but that's not a huge thing. So we are double checking on a couple of on that item specifically.
So this, on this item, we would just be looking for approval for the contract. We've already approved the bid, but approval for the actual contract, because we were kind of waiting for the actual contract to come in to make that good to go. And from what you've seen, you didn't see any concerns with the actual contract, did you?
No, we also did have discussions with the low bid individual too, just to confirm that we were all on the same page with items. And I think that he agreed that he was on the same page as we were. So
Make a motion to approve the contract.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Lakeview Bleacher Project contract. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We have a contract. Thank you, Ms. Rochelle.
thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle, for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Under new business, consideration and action on the appointment of board member to the board vacancy.
So Lisa and I discussed today, we want to make it so that you understand the process for this, how this is a little different than electing an officer. So in the case of electing an officer, you open nominations and you can nominate multiple people and then vote on those people. In the case of appointing an officer, you would actually be making a motion to appoint an individual. So when you make a motion, that's the person to be considered from that point forward, if it receives a second. So
They've
just,
nominated themselves, I mean.
right, yeah, they've nominated themselves.
So I'm looking for a motion.
I know in the past, when we've done this in the past, we've had to do this in the past, since I've been on board, basically give each person a chance to speak.
And with it being consideration, we would be within our rights to do that, if that's something the board is amenable to.
Would like to hear.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Sure. Mr. Berger, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you.
Let's have a seat here. I noticed that there was a vacancy, and I know there's a lot of new people on the board, and I just currently got done with a 4-year term, and I learned a lot, and I have a lot of experience, and I really, I'm open to offering to fill the rest of this term if the community, or if you guys feel that that is what you'd like. So.
All right, any questions? Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
My name's Josh Sennett. I realized there was a vacancy. I reached out to Mark to throw my name in the hat. I'm originally from Centerville, graduate from 2001. My kids have graduated from school here. Recently moved back September of 24, so I'm in the schools a lot with my current job, working with the teachers, the students, doing a lot of things with the school. I figure throw my name in here just to offer a chance to continue helping the schools grow into a better atmosphere for our kids and our community.
Any questions? Thank you.
Good news is you have two upstanding individuals who both would make great board members. If you can move the superintendent and take both, then you can be better off.
So you need a motion to appoint,
Yes.
is that, okay, I'll make a motion to appoint Tim Berger to our vacant position.
We have a motion to appoint Tim Berger. Do we have a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. Do we have another motion?
I make a motion to nominate Josh Sennett.
And I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to appoint Josh Sennett. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Roll call, excuse me.
Moore,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
White.
No.
Nothing like an awkward moment with two great people to have to make a decision.
I guess before we move on to administer the oath, Tim, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks for letting me come in here and have a chance to speak, and Josh will do a great job. So, I honestly, when I heard he was coming here, I thought about not coming. But I wanted to make sure that the school board was covered with somebody good, and I'm confident with that, so,
All right.
thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah.
If you're going to the game, please ship before you go to.
Okay, if you'll step forward, sir, we'll administer the oath.
Where you want me to be?
Right here.
Do I hear spot?
Yeah. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the office of Centerville Community School Board Member for the Centerville Community School District as now and hereafter required by law?
I do. Okay, and you can take a seat right down here in the corner.
Put you in the corner.
You put me in the corner.
That's right.
Front row corner.
Front row, yeah, they said.
Congratulations are in order, sir.
Thank you.
There's a board packet there, I don't know if you've had a chance.
Okay, we are ready for the student representatives.
The hard part. If you guys want to move one of those chairs up, so you both have one, that would be perfectly fine. It's awkward to stand in front of the board.
Hi everyone, I'm Miley Halverson. And I'm Bryn Clark, and we're here today on behalf of the Student Council. Last week, FFA members went to sub-districts. And Kira Whistler ended her freshman season at the Iowa State Girls Wrestling Tournament. The Centerville High School boys swim team competed at districts and medaled for the 4x50 relay, and swimmer Sawyer Kokorin qualified for state in the pair of 50 and 100 free. NHS is doing their annual carnation sales. Carnations will be passed out on Friday, February 13th. NHS officers also passed out scroll applications for students who have met the NHS GPA requirements. Student Council is hosting a school-wide bingo to add some fun and keep students motivated throughout the third quarter. Playoffs for esports are next Tuesday, February 17th. The play is working on full run-throughs. The first mock trial competition is March 9th. Speech competed at state over the weekend and got multiple 1 ratings. Now they will start large group state speech. Ashley Calaponi and Sophia Caraccio went to a district and state officer student council meeting on February 3rd. They finished planning the upcoming district conference. Next week, student council is taking 21 student council members to the district conference in Oskaloosa. 9 Red student athletes attended the 2026 Female Athletes Summit at Musco. They learned about National Girls and Women's Sports Day while talking about leadership, navigating and recruiting for college athletics, and fueling the female body more. Mrs. Weinberg took 5 of her Indian Hills accounting students to the ISCPA High School Accounting Showcase at DMAC. It was a one-day in-person event where high school students stepped into the roles of CPAs. They worked in teams while analyzing real-world business scenarios where they were tasked to develop solutions and present their ideas to a panel of professionals. This Wednesday, there is a group of 10 freshmen attending a college visit to Central as a part of the Gear Up grant. FCA took 16 students to Lakeview last week for their monthly outreach project. They read to the students. Would you like to have any questions?
I'm kind of excited about the bingo. I hadn't heard about that until just now.
Yep.
Did you say something about scrolls?
Yeah.
Okay, what is that?
It's what we give out to the sophomores and basically any upperclassmen who meet the GPA requirements to be on NHS. So it's like the application.
You see, I
You
didn't
didn't
know
get
what that was. Never mind.
Nobody came to see you, nice.
I didn't get that.
Any other questions or comments? Very thorough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
About every college that we went to a college visit for had bingo nights. Apparently this generation is into bingo.
Yeah, so that conference we went to last summer in Oklahoma, they do it monthly at that high school, and it's basically on like a Google Meet.
Huh.
And so their principal does it from his office, and with a kid or two, and they pull cards. And when you get your bingo card, when you hit bingo, you have to get up and sprint, and the first person that gets there gets the prize. And so it'll be Friday afternoon. They'll have, sometimes the prize table will be in the commons, sometimes it'll be over by the exit to the north lot, but you have to book it, and then they'll have some student council kids in the hallway.
But you can't touch me.
Yeah, you can't touch anybody. There's a video on repeat telling them, like, you can't push anybody, you can't do this. But the student council kids have kids in the hallway to follow them with their cameras, so that you have a live feed of where the people are at, where they're running from. As it's happening. It's pretty cool, or it was in Oklahoma, so I'm excited to see on Friday what it looks like
I
at
think that
CHS.
bingo would be great, or our football team will get better at tackling, and our insurance will go up.
The video very clearly says you cannot touch any other student.
Awesome, that's fun. Yeah.
Well, last time I did bingo for a bunch of old ladies. It's got a full contact thing. If you got old ladies.
It's a little chippy.
We are down to discussion of the 4-day week survey.
Awesome. Hey Cameron, how do I get in to present up?
Send it to you.
Okay. I put it together in a presentation. I took all the survey data and tried to disaggregate it a little bit for you and kind of identify some of the themes. I can give you the raw data, but it's 1,085 responses, so I even asked ChatGPT to help me identify themes in it, because I'm like, okay, none of the responses are the same, so. At least within the anecdotal stuff. It's coming in my email.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And this isn't part of our packet, correct?
It's not, no. Here we go. I'll hop on in here and share this to you, and it'll go up on all the screens, so you'll be able to kind of see it there. And again, there is not approval on this item on purpose. This is so you have time to see the information and, sorry, I gotta tell it to join from the browser. See the information and take it in and ask questions. Continue without microphone and camera because nobody needs to see more of my face. There we go. Thanks, Cameron.
You are not the wizard I thought.
No, I'm really, like, this comes to a limit.
Somebody's been bringing it.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, yeah. Means a lot.
I could've left that.
You don't get a chance to get him very often.
Thanks. Let's turn my volume off, because it's nonsense. Share screen. Share. The survey. Here's all mine. There we go, now we're set. Okay, so as you know, we conducted a survey over the span of about a week and a half. Through that survey, we'd ask people from our community, parents, and students. We actually had a number of our high school and middle school students fill out the survey to give us some feedback. I've got the ability within this data to disaggregate it based on the group, and I felt like that was a very important thing for us to have. Not that we don't take student feedback as valuable, because we certainly do, and there's definitely value in student feedback. However, there are certain questions we want to know from parents. And that's why I've kind of disaggregated that as we go through this presentation, but I can always pull up information to know what the students felt about certain things. And there is really interesting data within that. just to kind of call it out, I mean, obviously, all of this comes back to if we're meeting the mission of our district. Are we helping all students to learn well, become lifelong learners, and contribute positively to society? Whatever decisions we make with the calendar is just setting up a framework for us to be able to do that work for our students, and is what's important. So into the fun stuff. In terms of the role of respondents in our 1,085 responses, we had 448 parent or guardian responses, 381 student responses, 145 staff responses, and 111 community responses. One thing to note in here is that it is possible for a staff member to also be a parent and guardian. So that's one thing that to make the decision where you select one, we're gonna get data where it could be, you might be both, or we're gonna get data where we select one and the opposite might be true. So just something to see. And that you kind of see broken out there on that pie chart, what percentage of our responses were from what group. So 448 parent and guardian responses, I don't think I've seen even a couple hundred of that before. So this is a pretty amazing response rate. One thing I think I shared with a few of you as I just kind of went through, I was amazed by the number of responses. Even when I ran the survey for the calendar for a 4A district in my previous job, I never saw over 1,000 responses. And so Burlington is significantly larger than Centerville, and I never got over 1,000 responses. So I'm amazed about the way that our community came out responding to this. One of the big questions that the committee looked to address through the survey was this idea of childcare need for families. And this is kind of how that bore out with the entire group here. So 68.8% had little to no concern of that one, with 11.2 with a high concern for childcare. And so when I see that, the first thing I thought, because as you analyze data, you come up with a lot of different thoughts, right? The first thought that I had was, let me pull out some of those subgroups and let me see how that impacts parents specifically. So I did that. And this is the number of responses then on the right-hand side, rounded to the nearest tenth, the responses from parents only to this. Now the N size is smaller, so we're talking an individual vote it means a little bit more, right? With a smaller N size like this, it's a little less statistically easy to manage, but we still had a lot of responses. 304, which is 68.5%, listed little to no concern, and then 14.9%, listed major concern for that. So we definitely still have some folks with some concern there. The anecdotal information kind of allows us to understand a little bit more about why people chose what they chose. And I did use an AI tool to help with some of this. I went into ChatGPT actually to work through some of this, because as you look at 185 paragraph responses, or 1,085 paragraph responses, it becomes a pretty daunting task to come up with some themes. And I asked it to kind of analyze the data with me, and found one, primarily the first thing it said was that childcare is not identified as a universal barrier, with the majority reporting either no response to the open-ended question, or specifically saying this isn't a concern, this isn't an issue with this. We did have 24% of respondents who suggested an idea of a district-run daycare option to be provided, or a school-based program on the off day. In order to run a daycare, the district would have to establish what's called an enterprise fund that has to have its own starting money. We're not legally allowed to use general fund money to provide a daycare. So that we've kind of looked into some of those things, but I will tell you that most of the superintendents I talked to, in fact, I spoke to another one this morning, and I asked her, they switched 2 years ago, and I said, you know, when you did your programming, she did some camps for half days. And I asked her what their response was, and in their district, they had 10 students at their highest for one of the days off the first year, and so far this year, they've had 6 students at its highest. Now, I think in the case of a couple area districts, they've got some daycares that are in place for some different reasons as well. and that has been a little bit more positive for them. But my understanding from both of them is that it's not significantly impacted by the Friday, or by the day off of school. So not seeing a lot of that. This one was interesting in that it's similar to the next one. There was a lot of, I worry that other people's kids will have a problem with this. This isn't a problem for my kids, but I'm worried about other people's kids with this. I don't know, but I will say I felt this little twinge of maybe humanity can be saved still, because people have empathy for each other as I look through this. As we talk about this in food insecurity, people are actually looking out for their people in their community, which I am really kind of proud of, that we've got a small town that does that. 13% of the respondents, it kind of fits something into the idea of, they had some other ideas of what they were looking at for childcare on those days off. So a lot of comments about older siblings, some about maybe some high school kids that are available now. I do know some of our administrative team on PD days uses some high school kids for theirs. And then there was also, some people said, why not use the daycare that you're already using on the professional development days? So that was a big thing that came out from those folks there. And again, speaking with superintendents who have implemented a 4-day week, childcare was listed as a major concern on every one of their surveys and every one of their town halls. And all of them indicated to me that it really didn't bear out in the things that they decided to try to offer, that they really ended up not having students to support anything on those Fridays because people wanted that extra time with their kids or whatever it was that was causing that. I put SBRC, so that's the School Budget Review Committee. So if your enterprise fund doesn't zero out each year, you have to go in front of the School Budget Review Committee where they review your district's finances. And one superintendent that we spoke to who had a daycare, was that 3 years ago that he had that? They actually told them they had to shut their daycare down, and there was a ding on their paperwork because they didn't balance that.
And that's a state level thing.
That's a state level thing, yeah. They're the ones who, last month I believe we approved the at-risk supplemental amount. Do you guys remember approving at-risk money? At one point, the SBRC request for supplemental aid. So that's the group that reviews those requests to process them. They're also the group that when Russell Schools, I think that's the most recent school that had to be closed down by SBRC, when they went through that process, this is the group at the state who is the arbiter of, are you following school finance properly? And so if they are getting involved in your district, that's usually not a great thing for you. That usually doesn't bode well. So another concern that we in the committee talked about was food insecurity. I admit I was kind of surprised to see how low some of these results were. 84.1% listed absolutely no concern there at 1, or little to no concern. We had 3.2% listing a great deal of concern, but again, this was another one where you kind of teased it out and looked at those 5s. In a lot of cases, it was, I'm very concerned about the kids that count on breakfast and lunch. There was not a lot of, my kids have a problem with this. There was a lot of, I'm worried about the kids that would have a problem with this. This one is food insecurity among parents specifically. So I teased out parents on this one because I felt like those are the people who have the best knowledge about whether students in our district are food insecure. As some of us had talked internally here on the administrative team, I think we all that I've talked with about it, we can all think of individual cases of a student, and I think our teachers very much know this. Amanda, you probably knew this when you were working with kids and probably still do. Kids where you know that's a concern, and the team works together on that. So like our food pantry might specifically support a family that we find a need for. So I don't think that's any different within this. While the number is listed as low there, I still think we have some of that in our community. And I still think we have people for whom we're going to have to offer support. So the anecdotal information, and I just feel like I'm talking, please feel free to holler at me if you want me to stop and say something, that's fine. Very few responses indicating a personal impact from food insecurity. Many of them, like I said, talk about others who rely on school lunches. There was a great quote, important to consider those who depend, sorry, it's kind of cut off on my screen, to consider families who depend on breakfast and lunch. I'm really proud that we have people that are thinking about all of our kids that way. And I think that's something that has to be called out in this, our community. And it wasn't just staff responses, though a lot of staff responses were pretty empathetic that way and really thinking about the kids and the families, but even community responses, parent responses, a lot of people thinking about other people in our community, which is great. The food pantry at the high school was reopened this year. McKinley Lane is running that. He's got a good program going there. We are not allowed, so I did find out, we are not allowed through the school food program to offer grab-and-go lunches on the off day, like summer food, like we do for the summer feeding program. That's something I had hoped that we might be able to do. It's not something I've really seen a lot of from 4-day schools out there, but I thought if this was something we do, maybe this could be a good tool for us. But we're not allowed to do that because it's federal guidelines for that, and they like to have rules. And again, for years, we've always worked with families as these needs arise, and I think we probably always will. We asked a question about whether people felt that transportation to activities or practices on the day off would be a concern. Really small sliver here. I didn't disaggregate this data because it was so overwhelmingly no. I can with anybody individually between now and the 23rd if you'd like, but it didn't seem like it was going to be a major issue. I have asked Jared that if the board would make the decision to adopt a 4-day week for next year, that we monitor our student involvement, particularly with students of low income, to determine if we see any drop off in involvement, because we've set a goal at this table of having 100% of our kids involved in activities, and we're constantly watching for what we need to do with that, and if we need to look at any additional transportation support for some of those kids. So that is on our radar to monitor and evaluate as we would go through first year. This is everybody's opinions on whether a 4-day week would be a positive tool for recruiting and retaining staff. As you know, we're in the middle of a pretty major shortage. We've been pretty lucky to date in filling our roles, but that luck can always end on any given day. And it does seem like nearly 70% said they think it would be a valuable tool. And I think with this question, rather than disaggregating to the parents, disaggregating to the staff tells us more about whether it's a valuable tool. So in doing that, 77.2% of the staff who responded to the survey said that it would be a valuable tool. 11% said no, and 11.7% had no opinion. So just interesting information. I know there were a couple of anecdotal ones to this effect that said, I'm a young person who's getting their teaching license. If I can make $50,000 a year to work 4 days one place, or $50,000 a year to work 5 days another place, I'm gonna take the 4 days every time. So again, that's like maybe 1 or 2 responses to that effect, but just interesting qualitative data that I probably wouldn't have gotten without those open-ended questions, and I thought at least it gave me some thinking. Oops, skipped one. Perceived well-being. So we asked our respondents if they felt that a 4-day week would have an overall positive or negative impact on the learning and well-being of students in the district. 68.8% felt it would have a positive, 17% felt it would have a negative, and 14.2% felt it wouldn't have an impact one way or the other. This is a place where I've talked with our committee a lot about research related to 4-day week. And I want to tell you that the research is super flawed that's been conducted thus far with a pretty small n size. So if you're like a research person, n size is the number of responses, right? There's not a lot of reliable data out there that tells us what the impact of a 4-day week is. Some of the bigger studies are from some state agencies, and generally, like Missouri, the Missouri legislature conducted a study, I want to say it was 2 years ago, that found no difference for student outcomes based on the number of days. But again, you're still not talking a large N size, there's no control that's been done for parental education and for socioeconomic status in many of these studies. So I believe that the data still doesn't give us a clear picture. So I would say if this is something that we as a board would decide to move forward to, my hope would be that we would be one of the schools that could be listed in that data to say, oh my gosh, look how great it is for kids if we did that. Because I think we're gonna still have, no matter what we do, some control over our own destiny with that. And there's nothing telling us one way or the other here. Just kind of pulling a few themes out of what people said in the tell me some positives about the calendar, tell me some negatives about the calendar, and what can you improve. Looking at positives, there was this big theme, a lot of people talking about, I want the additional family time, I want the scheduling flexibility. There were a number of people who talked about being able to schedule appointments on Fridays that they wanted to get in so they didn't have to miss time during the week, which I personally really like that, as much as we've been tackling chronic absenteeism. A lot of people commented about improved quality of life from additional family time. My family probably would tell you that would be a negative at home, but I think other people enjoy their people at home, so that's a positive, that's a good thing. There was a quote that I kind of felt hit that, and ChatGPT agreed, it was a great talking partner on that, and it said that families can take time off on Friday for their activities and miss less school in the middle of the week. That was one of the respondents' response there, that it said kind of summed that up. There were a number of people that discussed reduced burnout and improved mental health, and allowing students to focus more when in school. At first I kind of thought that maybe, because ChatGPT identified that burnout and improved mental health first, so I kind of dug back in to figure out where it was saying that, and I thought it was just talking about maybe staff burnout and improved mental health, but actually, and there were cases where it was talking about they felt that would it be good for students to improve on burnout and to improve their mental health. Many comments that are, wow, that's a poorly written sentence, I apologize. There were a lot of positives that were listed about ending the calendar before June. There was a survey question in here that I didn't analyze for this. I pulled it for the calendar committee when we look at the calendars and really fine tune the days actually, and that was balancing, you have to get so many hours in a year. Is it more important to get out before June, or is it more important to have a longer winter and spring break? And it was pretty overwhelming that it was get out before June. So that kind of lines up with the anecdotal information here that people just want to make sure we're out before June. Negatives of this calendar that people identified, the day would be longer, so there were concerns about maybe is it hard for kids to focus? The impact on after-school activities, later dismissal time could lead to some conflicts. Could it impact after-school care? Starting that 25 minutes later, does that make pickups and drop-offs work differently? Longer evenings with sports, just going a little bit longer into the evening there. How to maintain academic effectiveness, and this one came, I was really pleased to see some great questions from our staff specifically about, here is my content that I address, how do I compact that in a way that I can be effective and get all the standards that I want to get. I won't say it was the majority of people that asked that question, but there were a number of people asking that question. We're getting people to think about, if my weekly routine changes, how do I address the things that I need to address with my kids? And I'm really proud of our staff that was a big question on this survey. I think that's a huge deal and speaks well for what our people are looking to do. And Julie and I have had some really good conversations about how we compact our curriculum. I think one of the presenters, Mike, I think you watched that presenter that talked about, you gotta eliminate some of the fluffy stuff. There's, sometimes there's a little bit extra on the sides. Amanda, I think we talked about like some of those curriculums, like I think one of them
a lot
has.
of the curriculums had recommendations from COVID of things that you could cut out that weren't the required learning for that year. So again, some of the extra fluff.
Yeah.
And I think they could use those.
They're kind of structured already in some of those cases too.
Yeah.
COVID was really bad, I think. I'm making a pretty bold statement here on camera, I know, right? But there was some good to come out of it, and some of that power standards and priority standards work, so.
Mark, what you're talking, I guess
Yep.
what you're talking
Yeah.
about, so I said in on a presentation at the Iowa School Board Conference this year on the 4-day week, and it was presented by Sadell, Cardinal, and a school over by Iowa City somewhere. And, what you're talking about with that part, they said out of all the stuff, right, that we've already talked about and things like that, and the daycare and all that stuff, all that worked itself out. The thing that was the most challenging to get on board was teaching the staff that every single minute matters in the instructional day. And just like that, cutting out the fluff. So they said they still do stuff. And in Sadell and Cardinal, especially because they were our size, is who I paid most attention to, right? They still do stuff, right? But you're not having a party this, different things like that. It cut out a lot of that because they really, really, really stressed all their staff, every single minute counts.
I think that's big, and again, that's some learning that we got through COVID too, just how we could be a little bit more efficient with some of that time, and I think that's work that we'll continue to work on with our team. I'm kind of excited because next year, I'm gonna look at Julie and make sure I'm right when I say this. So I always tell Julie, I wanna watch your face when I say this to see if I got this right. I don't believe we have any letters that we have to do next year, is that right? Yes, so we get our elementary staff back. So as you probably know, that letters training, the state asked elementary schools to engage in this training that they were paying for to provide letters. It's reading instruction essentially, like the science of reading instruction to our elementary teachers. And it's taken up the bulk of the time we had to bring our elementary teachers into new things and to show them new things and let them work with each other and collaborate. So we're a lot more free now with that off our plate. So we have time to work in groups with our elementary teachers more during those PD days, and I think that'll help us out a lot. Yeah, did I catch that? Okay, was there anything else with that?
That was one of the things I picked out, that they recognized as, that was one of the things they had to, in both Cardinal and Sadell, right? The bigger schools that have done it, is just getting their staff prepared to be regimental on that time frame.
Yeah. Well, and Teach the Hills, we were learning from the Teach the Hill gal this last week that some of the interruptions that come from administrators coming through rooms or from announcements coming in, we've got to work on our part in cutting some of that down with this too. I am a huge disruption when I go into a room, so I'm going to really work to be less interesting. So, yeah, it's not going to be hard. No, very good anyway.
You and Taylor Swift, I mean.
Yeah, well, that's the name. What can I say? Haters gonna hate. Ways to improve the calendar that people listed. There was a lot of discussion about which day to have off. I really think for us, if we are going to adopt a 4-day, I really don't think we have much choice. Our students who are engaged in our Indian Hills courses that we have at the high school, which we have a lot of students doing that, and it's a great service for especially for our families who are more disadvantaged, because paying for college is tough, right? If we have a day off from school and Indian Hills has a day on, then a lot of times we'll have a number of students who won't complete work or won't participate as they need to. And just making sure we provide our kids with that opportunity and that understanding that, these are school days is a big deal. And I think that would be a pretty big burden to do that and could really harm some of our students' participation in grades in that. And we're doing pretty well, and we've made some great gains on that. I hate to see that go away. Fridays, one idea that came up, and actually I've been exploring some things, working on some ideas for this. Fridays could include additional support or intervention groups for individuals. Gotten some questions about that. Right now, what I'm working on is finding out where the line between school activity and daycare happens to what can I fund from the general fund and what do I have to then move into an enterprise fund. So I don't feel secure in knowing where I can go on that yet, but we've got some ideas, and even Jared and I have talked about some things that might help us towards sporting ways with that. Jared last year had done some, what do you call those camps that you did for some
It
of
was
the
like
sports?
half-day camps, kind of like those other districts.
Yeah,
And we kind of did that intentionally since Mark said he was gonna put the task force together and kind of roll it out this year. And so we did those, maybe 3 or 4 of them last spring, just to see, you know, how well attended they were or not. So.
how did that go? Did we do okay?
Yeah, I think,
So
I
much
mean,
interest?
I think the lowest we had was like 26 kids, but most of them, like 30-ish.
And I think sometimes when you do those like off-day things, having been a band director who taught summer band lessons, the trick is to do something that kids are excited to come to. Because then a lot of times you get, Mom, I really want to go, can I please go to that? So I think this was a pretty good example of what would be good programming to consider on those days. The more boring it is, the less likely you are to get some of those kids to push for their chance to get to be a part of it. Optional programming on Fridays for extra learning, that's kind of along these same lines. I admittedly, I kind of had in my mind, I might try to snatch one of the Fridays and do like a mock trial mini camp or something with kids to get that rolling. But some ideas for small adjustments to the calendar. Some people talked about, hey, like a longer break, or some other people wanted a shorter break, and some people went out earlier, and then there were like 30 people who said, I want year-round schooling, which I think would be awesome, but the state won't let you do it unless you were one of the like 5 people who had it before a certain date, which is too bad because it's really cool and probably very unpopular. The majority of people really didn't have a lot of responses to this. Said things like no comment, looks good, left it blank, just not a lot here. The question about would you be more likely to have your student enroll in Centerville schools? Because again, a lot of this comes down to, we've been watching for 3 years, you know, not every student who leaves because of a 4-day week. Some people leave because they're going to a virtual school, they don't want to be in person. Some people leave because they're mad at somebody, something didn't go a way that they wanted, and they leave to go somewhere else. However, a number of people will say, I want to go to that 4-day week. And we regularly receive that feedback. In this case, 59.6% of people said it would have a positive impact on their desire to be in Centerville schools. 9.8% of people said it would have a negative impact. 30.6% of people said it really wouldn't have an impact, neither positive nor negative. And this is just, and this, oh no, that one's not the filter. Yeah, that's the filter board, I'm sorry. So that's filtered to just parents and students there. Because they're the only people who are involved in that decision, parents and students. So community and staff don't make that decision. That's why you see the little filter down there. So after reviewing all the information and looking at all this is what our survey tells us our public is asking for us. So in 1,085 responses from all of their groups there, 73% of people are asking that we adopt that 4-day week by next year, or for next year. An additional 10.1% want it for the following year, so I think kind of looking at some lead time to get to that. And 16.9% of our general public here does not want a 4-day week. So little over 83% of our public wants a 4-day week. Breaking that down a little bit for you, because I probably, if I were in your shoes and I wasn't staring at the data for the last week, figuring it all out, I'd want to know this. Parents, 71.4% want us to adopt it for next year. 21.2% don't want us to adopt it. And an additional 7.4% want us to adopt it just with a year of lead time. So that's 70, I'm not a math teacher, but 78.8, I believe, added that want to see 78.8% of our parents who are surveyed want to see a 4-day week here. Staff only, 73.8 want to adopt it for next year, 13.8 want to adopt it with a year of lead time, 12.4% don't want to adopt it. So we're looking at, oh gosh, now this, you're gonna really get me here, 76, 77.6, right? 77.6 total there would like to see it adopted at some point. And then here is your students. Like I said, it is good to look at the data. And what's crazy about this to me is it did split a little bit at the end. But you notice how close that is to parents and how close that is to staff? I think that's amazing, because wouldn't you assume with students, 100% of kids are gonna say, give me the least school I can possibly get. And they didn't. They didn't do that. I just think that's really neat and interesting. Like, great kids, they're thinking, they're really looking at this.
Some
So-
really great comments from kids.
Really there were, yeah, as you kind of looked across on like, because you can't tell who it is, but you can tell student response and see all the responses, right? And there were a lot of good, like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And I just was really impressed about the way that our students are processing this kind of policy decision, because you don't sit around as a teenager and think about policy decisions too often. But knowing that this policy decision would impact them in such a major way, they've got a lot of good think abouts. And I was impressed with our kids. But yeah, so for them, I guess that would be 89.3%. So I guess 89.2 probably with rounding, I would guess, because of that 10.8 up there. And community only, so not parent, not student, not staff. 61.3 would like to see us adopted, 12.6 would like to see us give it a year lead time, and 26.1% don't want to adopt it. So this was our least interested in adopting group, was just community folks. And even at that, it's 73.9%, nearly 75. So there are a few management concerns that we've kind of looked at and already worked to address that I want to make sure that you're aware of before we kind of start thinking about questions that I should bring answers back for you with. One, and this is, I addressed this when I sent the survey to our staff, because I really want to make sure that everybody knows there is nobody whose desire it is to make our people lose money to this. What you see at the bottom of this page is a spreadsheet that I've built that has all of our hourly staff in the district. So every one of our hourly staff, their current pay rate, their current hours worked, their current days worked, their total salary for the year. And then if, and I've got some things on the side here that you can't see going further down, that show the number of days that we would work based on the calendar we adopt. I put those days into that, and it'll calculate the total salary by changing the days worked. So adding the 30 minutes to their day that we would add to add 25 minutes to a student day, what that would do. In this case, on the right-hand side near the top of that little spreadsheet at the bottom there, it says percent raise. So I'm not saying that would be the raise for the year. What I'm saying is that's the amount of money that we'd have to raise just as a part of this to get them to even on the year. And you'll notice it's slightly over. So like that person on the top there with the days, so they would make $20,858.51 on the year. This year, at a 1.6 increase to keep up, it'd be $20,861.46. So it's like a egg salad sandwich more, I think, on there. So that's something that we already have in place, ready to go. And Lisa's checked some of my work there, so she knows that I'm not doing it for math or anything there. And I just think that's so important. And we've talked CEA and Lisa, we've had some pre-negotiations meetings this year where we've made it very clear. I think there was this idea that went around for a while that one of the goals in looking at the 4-day week was to reduce staff salaries, and that is very much not the case. That's not what you want. When we talk about reductions that we need to make as a district, those are reductions in FTE that cause that. Those are not reductions in individual staff salaries that are going to get you anywhere on that. So I just think that's important that we are aware of that. Another item we'll need to look at is leave time. I personally believe it would not be good to go back and, I don't want to, and I would really request that the board, accept this idea not to retroactively look at saved leave time and change anything because of 25 more minutes a day. I think that's something that we can give our staff and be okay with, and I kind of felt like I was probably safe to say that here. But I just think that messing with that isn't any good. And we'll meet with the CEA and kind of look at all those contract items to make sure we're in line with what we need to have moving forward. I do feel like we have a pretty positive relationship there to make it fair for everybody and good for our employees. So nobody is losing money on this if we do this. It's not right to do that. A concern that has come to me, I'm really happy. A lot of people have reached out, asked me questions, caught me here and there. If you got a chance, AJ and Russ asked me some good questions on the pitch, their morning show too, to answer some of these. But one concern people had was, will kids be in school less hours and as a result have less learning opportunity? And really the answer to that is no. The current 4-day calendar being looked at right now gives us 1096 hours for the year. That's in line with some of our previous years. We're probably looking at a difference of the same difference we have in a given year. I think of the years that I've done the calendar here, we've been anywhere from maybe the low 1090s up to 1103 or 4 might have been the highest, I think. So it's kind of always right within that range, and this keeps us well in there, and it is well above the state minimum. I did get a lot of questions in the survey of why do we go to school more hours than the minimum, and there is a few reasons for that, and I felt like that would be wise to talk about here. One of them is we get inclement weather, and when we let out early because of inclement weather, because of snow, we actually don't get to make those hours up because our contracts are still based on days. So I can't get staff back to then add another day for that. So we have to have some cushion in that in case we do live in Iowa. There is ice, there is on occasion snow. That gives us that cushion to be able to make sure, because if we would get to the end of the year and find out we were short on hours, we might not be able to give credits to our high school students, for example. And they say that letting them graduate on time is a real positive. So we try to put that cushion in there just to keep us safe on that. And generally, from what I see, that's what most districts in the state do. They have a little bit of cushion to be able to get that out of that. Also, like our virtual days, we don't get credit for a full day for that. We only get, I think it's 5 hours or 6 hours credit for that. So we lose some hours there when we do a virtual makeup day. So that helps keep us in the clear. Addressing curriculum, we talked about this kind of earlier a little bit, but that idea of power standards or priority standards. And I think it's just really important that as we go through, what it looks like in year 1 might be different than what it looks like in year 3, but kind of hoping that's the case even if we have a 5-day calendar, that what we do next year is different than what happens 3 years from now as we continue to learn and grow. So we will continue to do work on reframing our work within the week to make sure we're hitting the essentials and addressing the right standards for our students. There we go. And then I just had like quick hitting items just to tell you things that we're thinking about, things that I'm working to be able to address. A request I have when, and I would think on the 23rd, I'd probably present to you both options to be able to consider on the calendar hearing date. If we would go with 4-day, I really believe the best thing for kids is for us to adopt a policy like Moulton uses for their snow days, where if it's a snow day in the week, you make it up on a Friday. And the reason that I suggest that is I do believe that in-person learning is a real benefit for students. And I can go with what the board decides, and well, of course I can, I like having a job. But I'll go with what the board decides, but I'm going to request that we look at it that way, because I really believe that's what's best for kids within this. Pep Chapel is one that I get a surprisingly large number of questions, not surprisingly, just a large number of questions about. That is one of our Friday school days on this calendar that's been mapped out. And that is an important tradition, and as we know about the positive childhood experiences research, engagement and being engaged in positive community traditions is an important mitigating factor for adverse childhood experiences. So that is something that has value for building resiliency in our students. I'm kind of a nerd for a football Friday. I kind of enjoy that kind of Americana feel of that. That's why Mary and I wanted our kids, well, back in Centerville, but a town like Centerville, because of how important those days are for kids. I think that's a challenge to solve with this. Just getting that game day atmosphere, letting the kids be celebrated by each other in the halls, thinking about things like that. We just have to be very planful with it. Question about activities on the day off. We would watch for transportation challenges and support kids as needed, because we are committed to allowing kids to be participants in our activities. At this point, I believe it would be wise to allow practices with some guidelines on those days, and an understanding, especially say like at the middle school level, if you'd have a middle school practice, which that might not even be necessary, but if you did, that shouldn't be held against a kid who couldn't make it because of a transportation concern. Just being very mindful about this. Isn't like when we were all in school, remember you'd have that practice that was optional, and if you didn't show up, you like didn't play the next game. I think we gotta be careful about not allowing poverty to be a barrier for our students, since we want that engagement. Professional development days, we're gonna work with the CEA on the number of those. Right now, we've got a number in that calendar. It could be something that after we get together and we map out what we need contract-wise, that maybe we ask for an adjustment at the board table to our calendar from there, but I think we're pretty close. And it seemed like we had a pretty good understanding of where we wanna go with that. Sub-pay, this is one that one of the superintendents I talked to had shared, hey, might wanna think about sub-pay, because you're asking your subs to work a little bit longer, so you probably wanna increase that amount a little bit. The good news is that's kind of offset by having one less day to hire subs, right? So it doesn't end up necessarily being a big increase to the budget, but it is something that we should look to make a little adjustment to take care of our subs. IEP service minutes, not something anybody at this table needs to spend a lot of time worrying about, but we would need to do a lot of work with IEPs to make sure that they reflect the number of days and the number of minutes within those days. Truancy and attendance, well, we would have some work to do with recalculating the days and hours for attendance letters and when we do attendance engagement meetings. That idea of younger student fatigue, I really believe it's wise to look at how we've built our elementary calendar or schedule, and looking at where are recesses within the day. Is recess, you generally want recess to be immediately followed by an academically intense activity with a little bit of transition time in there, right? But you generally have a recess to refresh a kid's mind and ability to function. So we want to use that time wisely and make sure that we're looking at that sweet spot and putting those, like reading and math typically, in some of those slots. And are the recesses spread apart far enough in the day? And where is lunch within that? How do we unwind in a classroom? What's something that we can do in a classroom to kind of get the sillies out with a group of little first graders who need to do that every now and then? Handbook and contract language, there's just a whole bunch of items that we've kind of identified a lot of that we'll work with our teams on, but those will be things that we spend a lot of the spring on if we adopt this, and that's good work. Activity strips, I do believe there will be a slight additional challenge of, right now, on some of our activities, we have where we can have a driver drive a route and then drive an activity. I think the percentage of those that we can do that with will dwindle some. We're probably not talking a major number.
It's a pretty small number. Fridays, it would free up drivers on Fridays. Wouldn't have any challenges on Fridays because of that. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, there's some, but it's pretty rare. The only time you'd probably see somebody do both would be high school basketball. Mm-hmm. If it's a closer trip, maybe like Davis County or Albia, where they can run their route and then leave at 4 o'clock, 4:15 after their route. It is pretty rare that happens.
So again, we're talking a real small percentage, but I just want you to be aware, because if I'm a person that's sitting at this table that has to make this big decision in a couple weeks, I'd want to know that the team is looking at all those angles and making plans for that. I would just think that we need to take a moment to realize that should we decide to adopt this, year one will not and should not equal year three. Organizational change is a really big deal. We're turning a big ship if we make a change. And it usually follows a pretty similar pattern. That first year, you're kind of surviving your change and you're learning what your change does within your system, finding a new equilibrium. Year two is about making adjustments based on what you learned in year one. And year three is where you truly understand what your benefits are and it stabilizes and you have a good idea of what your change has done for your system. And here we are in year zero, which is plan and potentially adopt. So questions, because it's a big decision and I want to make sure I'm getting you the information that you need here. I'm going to quit sharing so that I can listen.
This is something, there's a lot of information there that you could share with us.
Yes.
And go back through and
Oh
look
yeah,
at.
definitely. I'll get this emailed out to you guys as soon as we're done tonight.
Right. That'd be great, thank you.
So you tell us what the survey results are, but what are the benefits of doing that?
Keeping students. We have a lot of students who are leaving our district to go to a 4-day week. And again, I don't want this to come across as crass when I say this. So I have to be very leveled in the way that I say this. But with every student comes funding for the school district.
Sure.
And there is a balance between, do I want to still be able to have the shop classes we have? Do I want to still be able to have the home ec classes that we have? IJAG, do we want to be able to have those things? We need students in our district to provide those. And when we have a number of students who are leaving, looking at the surrounding 4-day, each time we have a group of students leave, we have to cut one of those things that makes us great and makes us the better place to be. And is it a bigger deal that we spread those minutes over 5 days instead of 4 days? Because again, it's still going to be the same hours that we spread those days. And I want you to know, I'm coming from this, I was very opposed at the start of this. And I am kind of coming to the conclusion that I really don't see, I don't see the detriment, I see the benefit in this case. Because we're able to keep all the things that make us, try not to say the words better because that's not being a good neighbor, but that make it where we give a better benefit to our students than other smaller schools might be able to with the resources available to them. So I think that benefit is more in negating a detriment.
So with that being said, like, I think also kids are leaving not due to the 4-day, but maybe like
Sure.
lack.
Like I said, it's not,
some-
I didn't.
Maybe like some lack of leadership also.
Okay.
So like, is this going to improve some of that, or
You'd have to tell me what you mean, I'm sorry.
in some of the school buildings, like maybe like behavioral issues and lack of some of those being taken care of?
Oh, I think we've made it pretty clear that we're addressing those behavioral issues at this table even as we
Right.
talk about the research-based strategies
But
we're
will
using
that-
to engage all students. I've been told, and that's anecdotal, I can't tell, there's no research that says there's any impact on student behavior from a 4-day. There's no research that tells us. Anecdotally, I'm told to expect an improvement in that from this, but I don't know that I wanna say that as a fact, because I feel like if I do, that's giving far more weight to it than is fair.
Sure.
And maybe that's not fair, I'm not a very good salesman, and maybe that's a flaw, and to be honest with you, that I don't sell well. But I'm told from people who have adopted this, that they saw some of their minor behaviors, some of their things they were dealing with, that itch that's always there with a couple kiddos, that when they've got that decompressed time over the weekend, that 3-day weekend, that does help.
Okay.
I just don't know that I could say for a fact that that's the right solution. It is empirically proven that there's a mental health crisis in the United States right now for our youth. And there is a lot of research that tells us that most of that is based on screen time for students and technology addiction, which was not a diagnosis in the DSM until the most recent update, which is devastating to think that we've literally added to our diagnostic manual for mental health concerns a new disability brought about by our technology that we as a society have given our children. But I don't think it overcomes that completely. Will it make it a little better? Maybe, I don't know, but I don't think it fixes everything.
And then we would, like, the teachers would need to adopt the new curriculum by, if it has,
No, it's not new curriculum, so it's the curriculum we already have.
they would just narrow it down.
Yeah, really focusing on those power standards, or some people call it priority standards. I think that's what Centerville called it when they went through COVID. I was somewhere else where we called it power standards at that point. Really the same term, power standards, core standards, priority standards. Education is weird, because if whatever company you get your PD from, they come up with their name for something so that they can patent it and they make their money off of you. And that's what that is. So I think here it was called priority standards, so. No, you're good, and those are good questions, those are the
Yeah,
right
I'm just
questions.
trying to figure out what the benefits of it are.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the data and people want
Yeah. Well, and I, you know,
to do this. I mean, as a
people's-
parent, I want that.
Yeah,
I mean,
people
but-
say that there's this mental health benefit from it, and I can't tell you, because that's such a qualitative thing, right? There's nothing mathematical about, well, I feel happier, or I feel more family time out of this. So I can't, there's no study that I could look at that says mathematically this is the answer to that. It's a feeling, and I will say, I think those committees that usually present, Cardinal is always a big one on presenting. Cardinal presents about everywhere that you can possibly go, and Joel Pedersen had started that when he was there. He was the superintendent who took Cardinal through the 4-day week change. He's now the president of one of the community colleges. Nyack. Yeah, he had worked for Heartland AEA for a couple of years in there as the essentially superintendent of that. I forget what that role is called, but you know, all those folks who are the converts to the 4-day, I guess if you call it that, will tell you there is this like feeling of a weight lifted off, like that there's this great feeling of it's so much better. I love it so much. It's almost like you don't want to say it's like a little culty sometimes when you hear people talk about it, but you do get that vibe from people that they've gotten this big change to their life from it. I can't quantify that in any way, so I'm really kind of a nerd, and I want to be real about that. And if I can't quantify it, if I can't put it into numbers, I struggle to explain it. But that's what I hear from the folks that are working on this.
And we don't know, like, if the people that answered the survey were low income families.
It doesn't disaggregate based on income, no. I didn't see a good way to put that in the
Right.
survey. That's a tough one, because like,
But
like,
we did send it through email to every,
yeah, through our Infinite Campus
Campus.
system.
everyone had the
and
opportunity to get it via email or text, so.
I think I got it like 7 times somehow. And I have 3 kids, I don't know how that happened. But I think that's why we got such a good response. Regardless of whatever our outcome of this is, I think we learned a lot about conducting a survey within a school district, and that is that method of using the Infinite Campus messaging system is very valuable to get feedback from our parents. And that sounds stupid to say that's learning, and it probably is pretty obvious, but admittedly, it is some good learning come out of this, I think. I think it's something that gives us that knowledge for when we want to ask about something in the future. Here's a great way to get that information out to folks. It's not just for snow days anymore. Not that we're going to bombard, I don't want anybody at home thinking we're going to bombard you with emails every day through that. I promise we won't do that, but for important things, I think it's a good tool for what it's worth.
I guess so, a couple different things. I did sit through that presentation on school board. I will tell you, so this is my 6th year on the board. For 5 years, I was an absolute, nope, I will never vote for a 4-day week, not gonna happen while I'm on the board. What started changing my mind, and at least the option to look at it, was when the state did what they did, right? We are all competing now for the same people in the schools. We're all competing, and it's one big competition to get the students. Last year, we spent thousands of dollars on advertising at the deadline for open enrollment, right? it got us nowhere. It got us nowhere. That's what we thought was best, and we did it, but it was a waste of money. We still lost the students to 4 days that we were gonna lose, right? Whether that was because they wanted to go to 4-day week, or they had a problem with something going on in schools, whatever it was.
Or wanted to be online, because
Right.
that is one that's a
Or
big
wanted to
one
be
that,
online.
that you see now.
We still lost the students that we were gonna lose, okay? I don't see whether we're at a 4-day or a 5-day. It doesn't matter. If someone's going to leave because they're not happy with something, it doesn't matter if we're 4-day or 5-day. They're leaving. What we can control are the students that are leaving for a 4-day school. That keeps money here, where we're still able to offer everything we can offer compared to the other small districts. That started changing my mind about how much. Last year we cut $400,000. This year we're around $300,000. We can't keep doing that. It's impossible to keep our district if we have to keep doing that. So why don't we, in my mind, why don't we make it the best 4-day school in the county, where we have twice as much stuff to offer every single student. We have more staff, we have more programs. To me, that part started to be a no-brainer to me. And then so I was about 75% before the conference, school board conference. And when I sat and listened to the larger districts talk about it, that are our size. And so things that stood out in my mind, right? Sadell approved, and their school board approved to do it with like 68% in favor of it. By the end of that, they did another survey, and 97% were in favor. Glad they did it. Nothing but positives when it came to academic achievement at all levels increased. Student and staff time in school increased, right? We didn't have as many kids taking those times off. Staff was there more often. That's huge. So now, obviously, office referrals, from what I picked up from Eldon and from Sadell, decreased dramatically. Now, you can say, well, you're cutting out 20% of your week, right? But they said it was beyond that. So that's the stuff that I picked out, and that, quite frankly, to me, put me over the edge. I'm 100% in favor of this. There's nothing in my mind, everybody has the same. It doesn't matter if it's a small district, a larger district, everybody that I've talked to and associated with has the same concerns. The daycare and the food insecurity. And every single one of them I've talked to said that actually was not a problem, not an issue whatsoever once it was implemented. I mean, I can think, quite frankly, in my position, right, in my job, I can count on 5 hands, or 1 hand, the number of kids that I can say are insecure with food, right? It just isn't as big as what people think. There's options everywhere in this community, and the people that need that, they use it. And that's the thing. Like I said, I'm 100% in favor from going from 100% against, just because of the stuff that I've learned over the last few months. There is nothing negative that I see moving forward. And that's just my own thoughts on it. So.
That was a way better way to say the qualitative stuff that I wasn't saying very well. I'm sorry.
You got that admin talk, you know, you put it in a layman's terms. So, it's just, are there gonna be people that don't like it? Yeah, there's gonna be people that don't like it, if that's the way the board moves forward, right? Are there people that are gonna be unhappy if we stay with 5 days? Yep, it's gonna happen. I think putting it out in the survey that was put out speaks volumes about what the community, and there's been questions I've seen, you know, well, why put it out to community members? Well, because we're a district. Everybody in our district. Okay, we don't work just for students, staff, we work for everybody in the district. It affects the community members. So I think having all that information is huge, and I think the community has responded, and responded pretty, like, much in favor. I mean, I don't, you know, I'm glad for, you know, what the committee has done. Another thing I've been hearing, and why didn't we implement this years ago? Because we've been studying it forever. I've been on the board for 6 years, we've never ever talked about it. Mike, I think you agree, we've never ever talked about a 4-day week prior to starting this exploratory committee. So it is brand new, it's scary because none of us have been through it, right? It's not what we did, it's not what we did at school, it's not what most of the parents did at school. That's the trend. We're losing kids to other districts 4-day. Some of the stuff we can control, some we can't. And if we keep losing, it's going to be very bad for our district. That's my 100% take on it.
I attended the same workshop he did, came to the same conclusions that he did. As a teacher, I wanted to see my kids every day. Because I thought every day that I saw them was another day that I could make a difference. But I can't find any research, any peer-reviewed research, that indicates this is gonna hurt. It might. I was elected to represent, not elected to do what I wanted. And this survey is a clear indicator of what the public wants. And I have to do what they want, not what I want.
And that's not what I'm coming from, it's
I
what I
don't,
want.
No,
I don't mean to take anything away from you.
No.
I agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
I agree with everything.
It's just like, if in 2 weeks we were to implement this, and it goes into effect next year, there's gonna be hiccups. There's absolutely gonna be hiccups. We're gonna bump our chin a lot, probably, trying to figure it out. It's the first year. You know, it is what it is. Luckily, there's a lot of stuff we can copy from somewhere else, right? And stuff, you know, you and your superintendent group,
Yeah.
right? You say, what's worked, what hasn't, right? And we could decide if this is how we move forward, does it work for us as a district, you know, based on that stuff.
Did have one superintendent, so like our ring around us is all 4-day. The ring outside of that, I had one superintendent reach out to me, some of their board members had heard some of the things that I talked about on the pitch, which I did not know that the pitch morning show traveled that far, so, AJ, good job, you've got a good viewership, you should probably talk to your ad people with that, I'm gonna guess. I won't name the district, cause I don't wanna put their board in a bad spot, publicly, but reached out, their board wants to know what questions we asked on our survey, because they want to know what their community thinks about it too, so it may well travel further in our area as a result of what our people had to say, which is one thing I said on that morning show. I really think it's one of those, as districts are adjacent to 4-day week schools, for some reason, and this isn't to say bad, it's just to say that I might be of a different generation. I might be one of the older parents now, I think, and that I've got a philosophy of what I want, and I don't think that lines up with a lot of the current generation from what I'm learning from this. And I need to make an adjustment as a leader to think, how do I serve the generation that we're serving? And I'd imagine that's, you know, if you're not learning, you're dying, or if you're not growing, you're dying, like, I gotta grow, and this kind of gives me a pause to think back and say, okay, what we've always done isn't what we necessarily want, so how do I grow from this and adjust to that? Just a learning moment out of that, I guess.
I don't think there's an answer that you have to this at this point, but, with our commitment to have kids involved with all these activities, will there be some consideration with schedules so that they're not constantly missing like core classes at 8 hours?
I think it has to be, yeah, and we've talked a little bit about that, Jared and I already, of or even do we try to work with principals to try to put advisory in that or something to that effect, so that maybe we're not missing a course, we're missing that advisory time, which, I mean, you know, that's, while it's valuable, it doesn't have the same impact as math class or
Right,
class.
right, and I think it's fantastic, we have so many kids involved, but
Yeah,
sometimes they
it's
leave,
challenging.
and you've got just a few kids left because so many are involved, and they're
Yes,
missing that same class over and over again.
yeah, I think that's
Only
important.
8th hour, the only class they have to miss.
The
So,
biggest impact is probably at the middle school, with the traveling dates for middle school events. Because even with the 4:30 start time, they still have to leave early if they're going to Cardinal or Sheridan or Clark. So that's probably your biggest impact, those middle school events, and then obviously when you get to the spring, with track, with some of those track meets, that they have to travel a little bit. We're trying to, like from last year to this year, we've shrunk a little bit as far as travel. We're trying to continue that next year, hopefully a little bit. But I would say it's probably those early Monday, Tuesday conflicts is where you'll see the most for track or middle school.
that being said, I mean, you can't ever say it's only 8th grade, because we do have students who miss full days for FFA,
Yeah.
miss full days for, they're going to miss a full day for mock trial on March 9th, which I highly recommend everybody coming to watch.
Well, I'm in student council
Full
next
day
week.
for
The girls,
wrestling.
the girls mentioned, you know, 20.
Consistently,
21
it would be
kids
more
will take
8th
next
grade
week for a whole
than
day.
anything, because it's not even always much of 8th grade. Sometimes it can be quite a bit of 8th grade though, I think, particularly middle school, right? I believe,
And Mark Perry's. Sorry.
particularly middle school with that.
Yeah, at the end of the day is where, like I said, middle school's the big, probably where you see it the most.
Yeah.
With the
I
high,
think
high school is a lot more hit or miss.
if this other school would look at it, and if we would be doing it, you're starting to move to a tipping point where more of the conference is in that 4-day realm, and then if you start to see more 4-day realm, 4-day schools in the conference, is it a lot easier for the conference to have a discussion of, should the middle school games really start maybe 25 minutes later? So our consistent time in the conference is a little bit later, because we're one seat at the table when we go to the conference. For how many schools do we have right now in the conference?
8.
8 schools, so we're 1 out of 8 there.
Yeah, and we put like we brought it up last year. I tried to push it back to 5 last year, and we went back 15 minutes to 4:30. So you know,
got something.
I put 45 minutes out there. We went back 15. So you know.
But I think if we would get a couple more
Yeah.
partners with us on that, we could start to get a little bit more voice on, can we push back a little further with that? Which again, was one of our survey things where people said, well then if activities go later, how does that impact things? And there only are so many minutes in a day, so I do think that's still a factor no matter what you do with it, right? Like, pushing back still means you're going later into the evening then, so that's not always a complete positive, but it does help on the 8th hour thing.
Mark, a couple, I guess, financial things on this. So just to verify, right, if we were to move to the 4-day week, absolutely no certified or non-certified staff is going to lose any money.
That would be my desire, yeah, that would be what I would want with that, and what I would propose with that. And as long as everybody here is amenable to that, then yes.
The second thing, I'm just talking to people, I guess I have my own take on it from what when I've talked to different schools and things like that. This isn't necessarily a cost-saving measure,
Yeah, not really.
right? Moving from a 5-day to a 4-day, you're basically neutral,
Yeah,
right?
so here's the only things I can think of, though I'm told by some of these people, oh, you'll get some incidental savings that'll actually add up more than you think. But really, the only things I see that make much of a difference is we might, now that I hear some of our classroom temperatures might be a little cooler on off days than they are right now. But bus, gas for the bus, things like that, doesn't add up really big, to be honest. It's gonna be about the same.
It's pretty net
Yeah,
neutral, right?
yeah.
So does it change our food service contract?
We'll have to rework with a couple things on that.
So we
But
got,
not in a major way, cause that's still based on, like, here's what a meal costs, and here's how
Yeah.
many staff you need per lunch service, and so we would work with them on it, but they've been really good about making adjustments when we've made requests, along the way with that, so I don't anticipate trouble with them. I believe their home base is Missouri, at least Greg, who we work with, is from Missouri, and Missouri has a little bit larger percentage of schools that are 4-day, so I would venture to guess that their swath of schools they work with there probably line up with 4-day schools pretty well. They may actually have things, actually now that you mention them, in relation to this, they were on the same agenda, and I hadn't maybe put using them as a resource down in my mind, but I might reach out to Greg and find out. He's their, what is he for them, executive director or some fancy title?
Yeah.
But I feel like he's a former superintendent in Missouri that is in charge of OPA, and they may have some feedback that can help us through this, so I appreciate the connection.
Is there any value to putting like a 3-year sunset on this idea? Not necessarily to end it after 3 years, but at least to review it. I mean, a good, solid review after 3 years.
I would think, I like the schools that talked about doing a survey after a year. I'm like, well, what do you think? How is this going?
Yeah.
What are we missing? I kind of like reviewing through the process too, if that's okay. I mean, I don't assume anybody's gonna tell me no to that probably, but, you know, I do think, like I said, year 1 and year 3 shouldn't look the same. But for them to not look the same, we have to have our ears open. And we have to be listening to people say, here's what went well for me, here's what didn't go well for me. Or we could even put in a checkpoint, like a sunset or a checkpoint that says, we're gonna re-decide this at this point and decide if we wanna move forward with it, or if we don't see the positive. That's got a lot of merit to it.
Anything else?
Will the information from the surveys be available to the public?
So everything that I do on my computer is a public record.
Okay.
So what I can do is I can kind of put some of the high level stuff out there, for people to look at. That'd be fine.
I think-
Nothing's private.
Yeah, I think I was surprised at the number of people and parents, students, staff were, positive
Yeah,
on
I
the
was.
idea. So I think in my conversations in the last week and a half with people, they were like, oh, there's no way people are gonna like that because of the childcare and this and that.
Right.
And I think, letting people to see that
I like that.
they will understand how we vote.
I like that a lot. What if I put it, do you think if I put something on our Facebook with some of those results, would that be a good way to do that?
I think it would be a really good idea.
Okay.
And that way, they could look at it for themselves, and it's not just us choosing, we're following what the public wants.
This may not be enjoyed by some people who have a lot of extra free time during their day, but I would probably say when I post that one, that probably won't be one that has comments on it.
Yeah,
Just because I think there are a lot of people who maybe just don't work during the day or something and have a lot of time to comment on everything.
I think I would do without the comments, they had their chance through the survey.
Yeah, no comment.
Yeah, I would not, because at that point, you're just, you had a chance with the survey.
We are not opening it up for discussion.
No,
Yeah.
This is just information.
yeah, I think that the information is good to have, but I don't
Yeah.
think we need to comment on it.
No, I like that. I think that's smart.
So Mark, so our next meeting, we're supposed to vote on this, right?
23rd, yeah.
Okay. What steps are gonna be taken between tonight and 2 weeks from now?
That's a great question. So, tomorrow I meet with the 4-day week committee one more time. They're going to review the data in a similar way to how we reviewed it here. What I'm asking them to unpack is to look at it from the lens of, we've got different walks of life there. We've got parents, we've got staff, we've got people who are looking at it from their lens. Tell me what this data says from your lens, and what do you want me to communicate to the board from you looking at this data? Or what answers to some of these questions do you think we should have in place? So we'll collect their feedback, and then I meet on Friday with the actual calendar committee, so that's staff. So the calendar committee is just staff. And generally the purview of the calendar committee is to review the individual calendar and to say, oh, that day should be here, or we need PD that week instead of that week, and spring break should be that way. I'm gonna also ask them to just on a high level, talk about some of the responses to the survey and some of the feedback from the 4-day committee. And then also the individual, hey, is spring break right, or are the days right, and all that stuff. So that they can give us some feedback on that, because I think you've got kind of two items here, right? So you've got, is 4-day week something we're interested in? And also, oh, by the way, either way, we have to have a calendar for next year. And we have to get that done in a timely manner and communicate that out. So I've shared with the calendar committee both a 5-day and a 4-day for them to give me feedback on both, on the fact that the calendar is lined up in the way that makes sense. And I always ask that we all double check that the hours add up correctly and check the days and everything. So those committees will meet for that. I'm working with our administrative team, and tomorrow we have principals and directors together on tackling some of those, like at the end I had those quick hitting items. Like I don't have a whole bunch to tell you on this, but here's the thing that we're looking at. And I want to make sure that we all have an understanding of these are the things that if the board on February 23rd would adopt a 4-day week, these are the things that now our clock is ticking. Because August 23rd, probably is that date, I think that's the Monday or the Tuesday. We'd have school, and kids would have to be there, and we'd have to know the solutions for how we would be handling that. Earlier than that for many of them, but we have to know everything by that date. So how do we tick back from there, and whose job is it to tackle all of these items, and who needs to be assigned what? And we'll continue to work on all those items within. So any of the things you saw as this needs to be addressed, this is a concern, that's probably what I'm gonna spend the bulk of my time on, and probably a chunk of Julie's time and principals and directors' time on between now and the 23rd, because I wanna give you as firm of a plan on everything as I can possibly give on the 23rd, so that you are able to make a decision based on facts. And with that being said, I would really beg, if a question comes to you that you're like, you know what, we didn't talk about that one, that's a great question. Text me, call me, email me, whatever, because like I wanna make sure that I'm answering all of it and providing for you feedback from all angles. Because I don't wanna leave you in a spot. I will make a recommendation on the 23rd. And I think that's a big deal, right? Because typically a superintendent makes a recommendation for action to a board. And it's real easy for somebody to skate out and be like, well, this is a hot button topic. Some people won't like the answer. I'm gonna steer clear. I'm not gonna do that, because I think if I can confidently say a 4-day week is the right thing, I will recommend that. And I will tell you why I feel that's the right recommendation. Not because you have to do what I say, because I really don't mean anything. But because I want you to know that like, you can feel confident, hopefully you can feel confident in me to be giving you a good answer that you can live with. That was a lot of saying things for not really saying anything, wasn't it?
Are we going to be, is there gonna be any other information given to the board?
Sure.
Between now and,
Yeah, well, my weekly update next week, obviously I probably would plan to share anything that and just the little anecdotal things that I get from the two committees. You know, just so you've got that, I could answer individual questions. If somebody's like, hey, you know what, like, I heard all that, I wanna sit down one-on-one. Like, I'm totally cool to sit down with anybody one-on-one and work through your thoughts. At the end of the day, even if I give a suggestion and the board goes the other direction, I can very comfortably work with anybody. So like, I'm not gonna leave crying or anything. So like, if you got a different opinion, then you come in, let's talk about it. Let me help you out either way. Is that kind of what you meant? Just
yeah, no, so there's a lot to unpack in a big decision like this.
in a fairly short window.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's,
It's kind of weird because I think there was this rumor that went around, or at least I had a few staff members tell me a rumor went around that like oh, they've known for like 4 years that they were gonna do this. And I will say, like, that's totally not true. Admittedly, and I've made no bones about this through the process. You can ask Julie. In the spring of last year, when we formed the 4-day committee, I very much, and this is probably bad, and there's probably 75% of people now who'll be like, man, he's a jerk. I hoped very much that I was wrong and that wasn't what people wanted. Not because I think it's bad, but because I just don't like change sometimes. And I knew it was gonna be a lot. And I was wrong. I told the committee even, when we met, was it the 4-day committee or was it the calendar committee? I can't remember. I told one of the committees, I said, here's what's gonna happen with this survey. Don't worry, it'll be 50-50.
Yeah.
And we're gonna get like 400 to 500 responses.
Maybe both.
Kim was at both of them, and I said, that's what's gonna happen. Like, we're not gonna get any information. We're gonna have to make a recommendation to the board, and it's gonna be really painful. I've done a number of surveys in my work, first as some of the district stuff I did in Burlington, and then here as superintendent. I've never seen it be so clearly one-sided as this survey ended up. So I think at that point, my job just becomes, and I'm gonna do my best impression of a salesman, which is not very good. There's some salesmen in town who tell you how bad I am because they've watched me try. I'm gonna do everything I can to fill in all the holes to make what the people want good. And I'm gonna try to sell the good. And then it's kind of on the team to decide, like, does that fill in the holes that we need filled in? But I can tell you this, whatever we decide to do, we're gonna make it, and the team that we're gonna work with is gonna make it the right thing for kids, whatever we do.
Anything else? Yeah. Just for you new folks, Mark Taylor doesn't usually speak this long.
Yeah, sorry.
Unless we're talking policy, so. We're moving on to the approval of the Discovery Room position.
Sorry, you have to hear from me again. These are the 3 positions that we need for the Discovery Room for next year to be up and running. So this would be for, I'm requesting a bonus to hire the teacher for the room in the amount of $5,000. That is because I really want to take this, I want to take this person on trainings. I want to get them out to different things this summer. We've got a life space crisis intervention, did I get it right? Training that they need to do this summer, which we would pay them for their time, but we're going to ask this person to commit extra time. And I do believe we have a couple people in district who have interest in it. Probably have to, select between those people to do that. For the associate position, because we're gonna ask this associate to be the person who gets additional training, some of that same stuff, who might be a little bit more in potentially harm's way with some of the more explosive individuals. I am asking for $1, I called it addendum in this, stipend, however you wanna word that, to take their pay level and to, as long as they're the Discovery Room para, they get another $1 as well, per hour. And that would be special education funds, because this is a special education room. So it does increase our special ed deficit by a very small amount to do that. But I really think it's important that we compensate the associate we're gonna put in this room fairly, because they're gonna have a hard job. And then to hire the additional regulate and return coach that would be specific to this room. So we would have one paid out of special ed that's just for that room, and then our one kind of regular regulate and return coach for the building. This will take some of the pressure off of that person. So we talked a little bit earlier about behavior and the things that we're doing to tackle that. This does allow us, through a special education lens, to take some of the more challenging cases off of the load of the person who's doing this for the building, and to put them on this special education paid staff. So it gives us those kind of split roles and lets this person focus on the smaller issues that come up before they would become big issues.
So the regulate and return coach works with special ed and non-special ed?
Yeah, right
students?
now, so we've got Bridget at Lakeview, and she works with both special education and non-special education students. I will tell you, a large portion of her time is spent working with the students who we have in mind for this discovery room. So she has less time to use the training that we got her last summer, and she's really good at, she has less time to provide for the kids who maybe are not as deep into it as some of those kids with IEPs are. So this would help take those, put and assign them here, rather than on her roster, so that that role could be more focused on kind of helping some of those everyday distractions that are coming up for us and impacting our classrooms, which I think would be good. And it gives us a person who can build that relationship and be that face for those kids with IEPs who need the additional support. So we've got those two bodies there. The reason these positions, that I'm proposing these positions to you in the midst of a period of time where I'm saying we need to cut FTE to the tune of 300,000, is the funding sources are actually different for this room. Because this is a special education room, it's not funded from those same general fund dollars that our other rooms, that our 300,000 we need to cut is funded from. So these are, you get this all the time in schools, and I think many of you have seen the little pipes document that the state puts out on what funding pays for what. This is a different pot that pays for this. But it will have a positive impact on the other pot, and it could potentially, through people transferring into these roles, have a positive impact on that general fund pot too for us.
Looking for a motion.
I make a motion to, and it's for the associate.
It's the associate, the teacher, and the regulating return coach.
Yeah.
And it'll be for next year, so we start the process of hiring for next year now. Maybe hire with a little bit of spring to do the training. We have to set up the training schedule with Danielle Keys, with Teach Danielle. I'm pointing at Julie when I say that, sorry.
Okay, so I make a motion for exactly what you said.
For approval of the discovery room position.
Yes, yes.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved. Approved setting dates and times for the 2026 and the 27 budget public hearings. Legal thing.
So my recommendation to meet the timelines are the first public hearing on the proposed tax notice for the 26-27 budget be set for March 23rd, 2026 at 5:30 p.m. And then the second public hearing for adoption of the 26-27 certified budget as April 27th, 2026, 5:30 p.m. I just need the board to approve setting those dates and times. So,
Normal meeting dates.
yes, they are. And they'll actually be their own meeting, just in front of the regular meeting.
She'll get two agendas for that day, yeah.
A second?
We have a motion and a second to approve the setting the dates and times for the budget public hearings. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Seemed like last year we had a little contention there, didn't we?
Yeah, well, that was kind of the intention in setting up the
Yeah.
notices the way they're sent out. So the notices that people will receive are not accurate to what actually will happen. They base it on 1 year's expenses and another year's tax rate in order to make it look worse than it actually is. The public engagement they were going for.
We do plan to do our presentation.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, I know we talked about changing a little, or doing a little presentation.
Yeah, so the presentation that we gave after the comment, we found out that you can now do that before the comment, so people know the facts.
It just won't be a full presentation, because it is just on that one particular.
Sure, just a little bit of information. All right, we're down to approval of the fixed price contract extension documents with OPA.
So our rebid is during next school year, we'll be working on our rebid. This is just our continuation for the year, essentially.
Motion approved.
I'll
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the fixed price contract extension documents with OPEB. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item H, approval of the 26-27 Great Prairie AEA proposal.
Julie, do you have anything you wanna share about that?
I would just say that we kept it very similar to what we are currently receiving this school year. We did add a few more, we doubled the math days just because we feel that's an area of need, that we need to continue to do some PD and working. I would tell you that I feel like with all the changes in the AEA services, it's been a challenge, but a great one. I truly feel like we are getting more for our money at this point because people are locked into our district instead of, well, when I have time, I'll come to you, where now they're scheduled to come to us, especially the ones that you will see purchasing like 34 days is considered 0.2 FTE, so we get a discount, which is why we buy it that way. They're in our district 1 day a week, or maybe sometimes 2 days a week, and then not the next week, but they're here consistently, and that's been super great for our staff and our principals to continue that academic work. So it's all kind of laid out there. Those are all the options that we could have bought that you see on like the left-hand side. It's kind of redundant in the bottom where you see we bought so many 8-day packages and 16-day packages and things like that, but overall, I definitely think we are getting a lot more value of our money with the way that AEA set it up with purchasing like this, because we are guaranteed those people, and we pay this over the year, so it's not like we have to come up with this. But if we did it now, we get the 10% discount, so that's why we wanted to bring it to you tonight, so that we could continue to get some of that savings.
They are a little bit more skilled salesmen
Yes.
than I am.
Yeah.
And presenting the deadline for a 10% discount. Great tool.
What pot does this money come out of?
So there is a separate pot for AEA media services and ed services, is that what it's called? And then the 10% special ed, so 90% of our AEA money for special ed automatically goes to them. We get to keep 10% in reserve to either spend with them or use for what we want. And so some of it would come from that too.
Okay. And it's all the money that we currently are getting. We're not spending any more than we've spent before. We're actually saving money in this area, so then that would just go back to our general fund. Okay.
Down
A
on our
little bit,
spending,
but
tiny bit. That wasn't necessarily the intention of it, because we do get some benefit out of this that we can't get in another way, but it is just a teeny tiny bit down.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Great Prairie AEA proposal. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved. Approve the personnel business procedures.
Just wanna call your attention to 2 retirements in there. Jeff Moore, who has been a physical education teacher at Lakeview for a significant amount of time. I had the privilege of working with Jeff, enjoyed working with him, retiring at the end of the year. And Andy Hotek, the assistant principal at Lakeview, who's been with us for, I think, 7 years now. I believe that's right, retiring from that role at the end of this year. So 2 upstanding gentlemen who have given good service to our students that will be very missed.
Make motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second to approve the personnel business procedures. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Financial reports.
I just want to make a comment about the extras on the table. The credit card statement has now been changed, so we just got that today. So we don't normally like to have as many on the table, but just the way that the board meeting date fell and when we got the card. So that's not like a normal situation. It will happen again next month just because it's the same. But I just wanted you to know that, so.
motion and a second to approve the financial reports. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Superintendent's report. Haven't heard from him.
Yeah, I think I've probably talked too much already, but I'll just say it's a lot of student activities going on right now. Our basketball team gets a bye in the playoffs. That's pretty exciting to be at that level. Just really proud of going in and seeing our kids working hard every day. You've probably heard plenty from me already, so I will go from there.
Okay. As a new member, Josh, we have what we call board member takeaways. It allows you to, comment on something you heard tonight, something you want to hear in the future, whatever. And so we won't ask you to go first. We'll let you follow somebody so you can kind of see what it does, how it goes. Okay. So do I have anyone who would like to go first?
I will. I found the information obtained from the survey to be very interesting and enlightening, and I look forward to that being shared with the public so they can all see the same thing we have, and we'll have a better understanding of how we may vote next meeting. Also, you talked about basketball. I also wanted to give a shout out to the wrestling team that will be participating in districts on Saturday here in Centerville, and good luck to all those wrestlers.
I really appreciate the time that you put into the presentation, getting that data sorted out for us and easy to understand.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's good. We're looking at other options, trying to move forward as a district and basically a few different things. So I think we just need to keep moving forward and trying to plug away at it.
Got the idea, Josh?
Yep. Looking at, trying to jump into this brand new day one, I think Mark made a very good presentation about this. So as somebody who's never heard anything about this coming in, it was easy to receive and look forward to continuing with that.
Thanks.
Well, just good discussion tonight. That's the important thing. It's good discussion all the way around. It's something that having different viewpoints is what makes us great at making sure that we do what's best for the district. So, good discussion.
I'm kind of excited about the discovery room. I think that's going to be a real positive step for us, and I think it will set us apart. And that's really what we strive to do, is to set ourselves apart from other districts, to make a better choice, I guess I should say. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.